Hey, what's up, guys? So the Midnight Beta is finally here, and I finally got my hands on the new Affliction Warlock. I didn't have access to Alpha, so this is my first time actually getting to play with it. I've got some thoughts, some feedback, and several bugs to talk about, so let's jump right into it. Jumping right in, I want to preface this is all just beta midnight stuff, and this is week 1 of the beta, so a lot of things are going to change, and that's kind of just the whole point of this video. I want to try and make some frequent videos over here talking about my experience on the beta as we go through changes so that you guys can kind of keep up to date with what's going on with Affliction in midnight beta. So jumping into it, starting off with my just general thoughts, and then we'll jump into feedback, and then I'll talk about the bugs that I found. Essentially, I think the entire kit from top to bottom has gotten some really exciting changes. And I'm extremely excited from what I've seen so far. There is a bunch of bugs, and we'll get into that. So it's a little hard to get a full grasp of exactly how everything feels right now. However, from what I am seeing and the way that I can kind of get an idea of how things are feeling over here, I'm very excited from what we've seen so far. So a few things I'll talk about. I'll just go over the talent tree. I'll go over some ideas I have for builds, and I'll go over some of that stuff. All this stuff's going to change next week as I'm making this. Is week 2 of the Midnight Alpha, or so the Midnight Beta, and that's when we get max level characters, and that's when we'll get Mythic Plus access as well. So a lot more information will be coming then, a lot more videos will be coming then as well, so keep an eye out for that. Be sure to subscribe for that kind of stuff. But jumping into it, I do want to start off with saying I do think we still have some pathing issues, specifically in this area. I think it'd be really nice if these 2 nodes were swapped, and same with these 2 nodes were swapped. That way you would have access to this path and you have access to this path. I think that's that's in a perfect world, because then we could take Nocturnal Yield without having to take Relinquished. I still think Relinquished is cool, but I think having to put 2 points in Relinquished to get the seed to get the Soul of the Seeds is a little brutal. But other than that, Dark Harvest is brand new. It essentially replaces Soul Rot. So instead of casting it, you channel it. It did have a cast before or something like that on the alpha, but I didn't have the access to the alpha, so this is kind of my first time getting any experience with Midnight Affliction. So you channel this, and as you channel it, like erupts all of your dots that are out there, and then Cold of the Week should extend all of those dots. As of right now, it's currently not extending Unstable Affliction. So it's really cool though. Go out, put Agonies on both targets, which that new Twin Agonies talent is super sick. Put you in this guy, put you in this guy, and then Dark Harvest, channel through it, and then it kind of just erupts all those things. Looks super rad, really cool. Currently, you'll see though, that UA falls off at 8, that UA falls off at 8, so that's definitely a bug. A little hard to play around, kind of feels bad. Shared Agony is that double Agony talent. We no longer have Vitaltain, so our main way of spreading Agony now is to just apply them, the old-fashioned way. So applying 2 at a time, applying 2 at a time, applying 2 at a time. It's really cool. I know some people were a little hesitant about not having Vitaltain to apply Agony to a big group of packs, but or a big group of mobs anyways. I think this is completely fine. I think as you're going into the pool, now that we don't have Vitaltain anymore, you'll just Agony and then put a curse out there. So you can't see curses on these new nameplates, but hopefully that gets fixed as well. But our curses, because of this new talent, Foul Mouth, also apply within 10 yards. So this is applying within 15 yards, this is applying within 10 yards. So kind of as we're going into a pool now, we're just applying Agony, applying a curse, applying Agony, applying a curse, and it's just applying to all those mobs, which I think is so sick. That makes me so excited for Affliction Mythic Plus, man. I am so hyped for that. On top of another ability that we got, which is Blight of Tongues, which is more of like a group utility ability. So it has 2-minute cooldown, which is a little long. However, it increases all casting of all spells by 100% for 12 seconds to all mobs that are within 10 yards when you shoot it out there. It has a pretty cool little animation. It's just a little cloud. It's not letting me cast it right now. Oh, there you go. Boom. So it's this little cloud that kind of like floats out. I was a little too close, and it applies curse, this like Blight of Tongues, to everything that's within 10 yards of that mob. Super sick, really rad. It's like it's an Affliction like animation. I feel like we just don't get any cool animations, but it's still pretty cool. It definitely looks better than Vitaltain did. Either way though, the functionality of it is super rad. A bunch of cool things happen to our class tree as well, kind of jumping around. Our pathing of our class tree is way better. I'm only level 80 over here, so we're gonna get 5 more talent points basically on both sides. And those talent points, I think, just give you so much more freedom in our class tree with how our pathing works now, where you kind of do, these are kind of like the staple talents that you'll want, and then you'll have some bonus ones to kind of play around with other things, right? We do have these new Apex talents, which you'll absolutely take these. So They just increase. They're basically just all cycled around haunt. So haunt now calls upon a demonic soul from within the twisting nether to haunt your target. The soul is unstable and ravenous, which is kind of rad sounding. To its host, and 3 enemies in the 10 yards suffering from your corruption over its duration. So it's just like an AoE haunt kinda. And then increases the initial damage of haunt by 50%, and haunt increases damage dealt to its host by 2%. It's not applying haunt to all of those targets, I'm pretty sure. We can't play with it right now on the beta. I think you could play with it on the alpha, but I'm not really sure. And then the final one is Shadow of Nathreza. They just recently changed this. They used to have like a carrion swarm mechanic tied to it, I believe. And now it's damage dealt by haunt has a chance to release a desperate demonic soul haunting its host, casting Wrath of Nathrezima, or Nathreza before Nathreza before banishing back to Nathreza. Calls down a meteor, and then that meteor explodes and does much damage to everything within 10 yards. So just basically giving you a bunch of extra bonus stuff from when playing Haunt. Super cool. You'll definitely be taking this. So that's 4 talent points. They can just get immediately soaked into that. So to play around with. And I've been playing around with a few builds over here, specifically for, you know, Mythic Plus. I have a Mythic Plus one, and then I have like a Raid / Soul Harvester one. There are some new talents that are in like our hero talents. We get some new stuff. The ones for Hellcaller are super rad. Just flat increases UA damage and flat increases corruption damage, or Seed of Corruption damage, sorry. And then it's doubled while you have Malevolence Active, so 4% or 8% on UA and 8% on Seed. Really, really rad. And then Devil's Fruit, I think, is one of the coolest ones. Pyrrhic damage from Wither has a chance to just proc Malevolence for 8 seconds. And then if you don't know, Malevolence is kind of like the main thing. So we just get 12% haste on that because of that bonus 4% from this guy. And then it increases all of our Wither stacks. And then this thing, again, increases the haste from Malevolence by 4%. And then when you cast either Seed of Corruption, or it should be UA, it increases those stacks on your Withers by an additional 2. So your stack counts that you're getting from Malevolence are like 4 stacks every time you do it, 4 or 6 stacks. Either way, you're getting a bunch of stacks, and then Malevolence proccing constantly. It's super, super rad, man. It's really, really fun. And then Soul Harvester basically got its current tier set bonus kind of baked into it. There's definitely stuff we'll talk about Soul Harvester in a second. There is several other new talents. Gambit kind of got adjusted, so it reduces cast time, got moved. Sudden Onset's kind of similar to what we already know about, like increasing stack count of agonies. There's some other cool ones. This one makes UA basically whenever it expires, it has a chance to just proc and like reapply itself. Really, really cool. I definitely think there's a chance that we take this even without, you know, going into our more like Mythic Plus build. I think this talent's pretty sick. I do think there's like maybe a floater talent here, and it could be Ravenous, mainly because Nightfall now, with this new Nocturnal Yield, increases or makes you have an instant cast Seed or an instant cast Shadow Bolt. So proccing more Nightfalls is never going to be a bad thing, especially for more AoE damage. It feels really, really fun to just proc tons and tons of Nightfall procs, and you're just spamming out Seeds. I was a little worried initially about Seed cast time, but Seed feels pretty good over here. So I've been pretty happy about how Seed feels in general, especially those instant cast Seeds and those Nightfall procs. Even though it's double consuming Nightfalls over here right now, it still feels really good, right? So Ravenous might be worth it. This ability I think is really interesting, and I was curious if we were going to be able to take this ability, and we might still. It's going to cost a lot of points to get into, but each enemy afflicted by our UA increases all damage you deal by 4%. Personally, I think this is more going to be for Soul Harvester, and I'll talk about that in a second. But it would be a really interesting playstyle if we could have this as Hellcaller too, and it would be worth it. Personally, I think right now it might be more worth it to go Creeping Death into the new Death's Embrace, which basically, when they are below 35% health, you increase their damage. You increase your damage from UA, Agony, Corruption, and Seed of Corruption, and Shadow Bolt by 40%, or up to 40%. It's pretty nuts. I think this is going to be a very good talent for us to have in keys. And I think that it's very likely that we take this with Solar Seeds instead of taking those other ones. But who knows, man? I'm super excited to jump into it and play around with it. So that kind of leads me into the other one, which is for Soul Harvester or / like Raid build, which I think both these have 2 different playstyles that I've been messing around with over here on Target Dummies. So the Hellcaller one is just kind of the default, you know, throw up Agonies, throw up Withers, and then just dump Seeds, right? Just spam Seeds, kind of do that. You might throw like a UA on your main target, and you're just dumping Seeds. We no longer have Shadow's Embrace, so we don't really have to maintain Shadow's Embrace on anything, so I don't think you'll ever be wasting Nightfall procs on Shadow Bolts in like an AoE situation, because if you're not doing that, you're just wasting damage from Seeds, unless you're looking for more Prow damage. However, with this Soul Harvester build, which I'm very excited to test in keys, we'll see how it feels. You can take triple capstones, and I'm not taking Soul the Seeds, and I'm just leaning into just full UA damage. because over here, Succulent Soul Shards do not apply to Seed of Corruption. So this only applies to UA. If this eventually does apply to Seed of Corruption and this is just a bug, then maybe we'll probably go back to running Soul of Seeds. And this might not even be remotely comparable to how much damage Hellcaller is doing. However, I think the playstyle is really interesting, and I just want to talk about that. So this is leaning heavily just into UA. So you'll still put Seed of Corruption out there, and I think you'll actually just run Absolute Corruption, just because you don't have to ever replace or you never have to, like, you know, recast your agonies or your corruption. So you do Seed, and then you'd pop that, you know, and then you would just basically maintain UA on multiple targets, Dark Harvest those, and then you'll get your Succulent Soul Shards, and then you're just dumping even more UAs into those guys, right? And you're just catching that. You'll catch your, like, corruption or whatever. But your main thing is just Nightfalls into, like, instant cast UAs with Malefic Grasp. So you'll have Malefic Grasp, and then you'll just keep catching all those over and over again. And I think the whole thing is kind of just spreading UAs on multiple targets to get value from Cloying Power, while having it have a chance to refresh itself. And then you'll either run the one that gives you 5% haste for casting it on a target that's already affected by UA, or you'll run the one where you just have a chance to proc and give you a refund on that Soul Shard. And you'll basically just be spreading UAs on multiple targets and maintaining all those dots. Which I think could be a really, really fun playstyle. So if we have the perfect world, it would be you have a choice of just going Seed Spam for AoE and keys, or you have the chance of going more like Prio dot, like just carrying around, you know, multiple UAs on multiple targets and gaining all that damage. We have no idea as far as DPS meters are concerned because nothing of that works over here right now, but I think the potential for that is really, really interesting and really, really fun. So that very much interests me in both regards. I think Seed Spam with Hellcaller is going to be really, really fun, and I think the chance for this to be really fun and maybe like a low count or like a low pull dungeon, something like, think like a Dawnbreaker or something like that, you'd probably get way more value out of this build in Dawnbreaker than you would the like Hellcaller build, right? So we'll see how all that feels as Mythic Plus becomes more available and as Max Keys become available. Maybe this is just pure like raid vibes. Maybe Cloying Power doesn't have nearly as much value as we want, but either way, I'm super excited to test both of it. I've been having a great time with Affliction over here, and I'm very excited to get into just, you know, how it feels in Mythic Plus. Jumping into my feedback portion of this video, I did touch on a few things in the first part, but I figured we'd just, you know, kind of make a specific category just for this. So the one that I kind of want to touch on the most, other than the just pathing, which I think pathing is actually really, really close to being fantastic. I think pathing for the class tree is really, really good. Pathing for the class tree, I think, has a little bit to be desired, only because you're still forced to take Seed in pure single target. I don't really know how we get around that, and it's probably fine that we just have it all the time, but it would be nice if you didn't necessarily have to take it in AO or in single target if you didn't want to. But either way, I really would still love to see these 2-point nodes be swapped with, it's like Shard Instability swapped with Fatal Echoes and Relinquish swapped with Nocturnal Yield, just so you'd have a 1-point node leading into these ones. That way you could make a little bit more decisions and it'd be a little bit more fun. However, I understand that these are very powerful talents, and I think that they kind of want us to be going into those nodes. Either way, that's kind of my main feedback on that. I do think Seeds of Destruction and Xavier's Gambit are kind of heavy 2-point nodes for where they are in the tree. We're kind of forced to take one of these. Definitely, I don't think you would take both of these in keys. I think it's a lot of points to like dump into these. But I think it's, if you're playing Soul Harvester or Raid, you're going into Gambit, and if you're playing Keys or Seed or Soul Seeds, you're going to Seeds of Destruction, right? I think Dark Harvest is in a really weird spot in the tree, considering that I don't think there's ever a world where you don't take it. I think that you take it in Raid, I think you take it in Keys, I think you take it as Hellcaller, and I think you have to take it as Soul Harvester, right? So it's definitely in a weird spot. I don't know exactly where I'd put it, but it's definitely in a bit of a weird spot, considering you have to take this thing. It leads us into Sow the Seeds, so it seems to be more focused for AoE, but maybe there's a raid build where we don't take it, and it works perfectly fine, but I definitely think that majority of the time, I don't see why you wouldn't take it. However, I'm more than happy to keep messing around with that stuff, and, you know, raid builds and stuff like that, so we'll see how all that changes, but I definitely think it's a weird spot considering you have to take it. Nocturnal Yield being tied to Nightfall, I think, is really interesting, and I didn't realize this from initial reading that this is how this would work. So I'm glad I finally got to test this stuff. I think it feels really, really fun, and it's really interesting to be able to make the decision between Shadow Bolt and Seed of Corruption. Usually procs so many Nightfalls, it actually feels really, really fun to just have that many seeds that you're just like ripping out there. It reminds me a lot of like Rain of Fire spam, especially considering that you'll get to a point where you just have so many Nightfalls that you're just able to just dump seeds, and we're usually just swimming in Nightfall procs as Hellcaller, so I actually love this talent, and I think it's fantastic. At first, I was really confused, but I think it's really, really fun. And I think if you tie this with Ravenous Afflictions, it might not be worth it because it might be too many Nightfall procs, and Ravenous is kind of a weird talent, and I think we might get more value from Death's Embrace, or even just from Fatal Echoes, especially for single target, but definitely really, really interesting. I'm still really curious to tell or to get a feel for how this is going to feel in single target versus AoE, and that is definitely a concern of mine. Is, are we getting back into a situation where we have a bunch of AoE damage but our single target's lacking, or we have a bunch of single targets and our AoE is lacking, right? So it definitely feels like that they want us to make a decision on our tree, which I'm okay with that as long as we're not giving up an insane amount of single target for how much AoE we're gaining. I think Sow the Seeds and this whole row is a lot of AoE damage that we're gaining, and I think that feels really, really fun, but we don't want to have to give up all of our single target damage for it, right? So hopefully we can find a balance with that where our single target isn't super, super lacking. I have a feeling that our single target's still going to feel really solid. I think it's just going to be about finding those talents that work with that. Maybe we're not going Death's Embrace or Creeping Death, and maybe we're going into Grasp to kind of help our single target, or maybe we're going, you know, into Fatal Echoes and Clawing Power, right? But my problem is Clawing Power, or Clawing Power, or whatever, it doesn't lean into our single target until we get into here. This is more of our spread damage, which I still think this is a really interesting talent, and I think that it has a lot more impact on AoE damage than it does single target damage, so I think it's more likely that you go Creeping Death, Death's Embrace to help with our single target, especially execute damage. So I'm definitely really excited to see all that stuff, but that is definitely a main concern of mine, is how much power are we giving up from AoE to get single target, or how much single target we're giving up to get AoE. So hopefully we can keep an eye on that. I'll definitely keep giving feedback on all that kind of stuff. The other thing I want to say is I think our utility that we're getting with Blight of Tongues and Blight of Weakness is really, really rad. I'm assuming that Blight of Weakness might get more value in like PvP, which is cool. Blight of Tongues I think is going to be super fun for keys. I actually love that we're finally getting some utility. I kind of do wish that it had a cooler spell effect animation. I think it's cool, but it's just this little purple cloud that floats out there. It's still cool though. But you know, spell effects. God, I would love to see us have more spell effects, man. I wish that I wish this kind of had more like tendrils that pull towards us instead of just like, you know, pumping. But either way, not a big deal. Again, with that, I do hope that Demonic Soul and Sucking the Soul Shards also affect seeds, but I think it would be cool if this just only affected UA. I really am like 50-50 on this. I think if it affected seeds, it would make Soul Harvester more competitive, at least in AoE. But there's a really possible chance that Soul Harvester is still really competitive in AoE, but just a different playstyle, and I think that would be really fun. If this just completely changed how you played AF, I think that'd be really, really rad. It already kind of does have a different playstyle, right, with just the way that Sucking Soul Shards work in general, but I think it has a chance to be really, really fun. So I'm very hopeful, and we'll keep my eye on that, and we'll keep you guys updated on all that stuff. So be sure you're subscribed, all that kind of stuff. If you have any other feedback on that, or any other like notes that you want to add, please leave a comment. Join the Discord, all that kind of stuff. I'm always down to talk about beta stuff. I'm always down to talk about Affliction stuff. If you're interested in playing Affliction too, I'm spending as much time as I possibly can on here and learning as many things as I can, especially as we get max level characters and especially as we get Mythic Plus, to try and help everybody learn how to play Affliction and to try and find the best ways to play it as well myself. I'm by no means saying that I'm going to find every answer, but I'm going to do everything that I can to find as much information as I can and have a good time. So I'm very, very excited for Affliction going into midnight, and I've been having a great time in the short amount of time that I've had on the beta. So if that interests you, I hope that you hang out, and feel free to join Discord and subscribe, all that good stuff. But that's kind of the most that I have feedback for right now. I think the other thing I want to talk about is, I guess the last thing that I'll talk about is Shared Agony. I think this talent is super rad. I talked about it briefly on my thoughts, but I know people have definitely come into my chat and been a little worried about not having Vitality anymore. Personally, I am hyped to not have Vitality anymore. I used to have like a vendetta against Darklair, and then it was a vendetta against Haunt, but it's always been a vendetta against Vitality solely because of curses. Everybody always talked about they didn't like Vile Taint because they couldn't catch their agonies. That wasn't so much a problem for me. I was already comfortable in catching agonies, and that's why I think I like shared agony so much, is that I was already really comfortable with just spamming out agonies and catching them in between pulls or in between like casts and stuff like that, and that was something that I actually enjoyed the playstyle of. So if anything, I think shared agony kind of just rewards that playstyle even more, and I'm already having a really good time with that, even on just the little target dummies we have here, right? The main thing I like about it is that we have Foul Mouth, which applies all of our curses to every mob within 10 yards. So that means that as we're going into a pool, like I said, we're just applying agony and then cursing. Applying agony and then cursing that target. You can't see it because it's not on nameplate, so hopefully they do have that. And then applying a curse, right? We'll probably only have to apply one curse when we're applying agonies. I do wish that it would smart catch agony. So like, if I catch this one, it would catch this one. And if I catch this one, then it would catch, you know, the other lowest one. Sometimes you get lucky and it just like hits the low agony. But it'd be really nice if it favored, you know, catching the lowest agony instead of just randomly catching whatever agony is near it. That's a really minor thing, but I think it'd be really, really cool. The main takeaway I would say is I'm very excited for Affliction going to Midnight. I think there is some really, really cool potential here. I love that we're finally getting curses. I love that we're finally getting our utility back. And I like that we definitely feel like a dot class again. I know that I've talked about on stream that I was a little hesitant about Seed of Corruption coming back. I didn't really like hate Rapture. I was never like a Rapture hater like everybody did. I didn't really care if we went back to UA Spender or if we went Seed, or, you know, Spender again, or if we stay with Rapture. The main thing that I do like is that we've gotten a top to bottom rework. And they've kind of looked at our spec overall, and we're kind of going from there. And I can say, just from the little bit of target dummy testing that I've done, your rotation and stuff feels extremely similar to how it did in Dragonflight or Shadowlands or whatever, except that it feels like you're kind of juggling dots again while maintaining dots. And it feels like you have more answers when you have to move, right? Because of those instant cast UAs, those instant cast UAs and those instant cast seeds, we have a lot of options, man, especially if we have to move. So I personally am extremely excited that we're kind of just doing this, like maintaining dots, sending out agonies, putting out curses, maintaining dots, sending out corruptions, sending out UAs, sending out agonies. Like your playstyle feels still very like affliction-y and like uptimey, but you're not as heavily punished for moving right now. We don't have a damage meter. We'll see how that feels, but I feel like the amount of instant casts that we have with Seed and the amount of instant casts we have with UAs, right? I definitely feel like it's going to feel really fun to kind of maintain and manage while in a pull, but not super, super overwhelming. So as you can see, I still have, this is just all base UI. I don't even have a single add-on right now. There is add-ons that we can use to kind of help maintain some of this stuff, and I'm hoping that LVUI, you know, maybe gets fixed or whatever, because I definitely like having some things. But even if we were to go in tomorrow and have base UI, I still think we'd be okay. So that's kind of just a quick rattling of some of my opinions and feedback on some stuff. I'm sure there's plenty of things I didn't touch on, and there's plenty of things I like to see. But I will be continuing to make update videos on Midnight Beta stuff. Essentially, my goal is every week, or as frequently as there are things I want to talk about. If you want live feedback on Affliction Beta, I will be playing Midnight Beta every single night on my stream. So twitch.tv/arson. I start stream at 4:30 Pacific time or 4 Pacific time. It kind of changes, but I'm streaming Tuesday through Saturday, and if that interests you, be sure to come by. I'll be doing a bunch of Midnight Beta stuff. I always am, whether it's sitting at target dummies or running Mythic Plus or whatever. We'll be doing as much stuff as I can, testing things over there. So if that interests you, please check that out. And that about wraps it up for that, man. So for the final section, I do want to talk about some of the bugs that I've encountered. I've reported them. I didn't find all of them myself. I did find a couple of them, or things that I saw myself. So I do just want to talk about those briefly. I reported all of these bugs myself, and I highly encourage you to get on the beta if you have access to it. Test things yourself. If you find any bugs, report that stuff. Not even if you're Affliction, whatever you want to play. But if you don't know how to report, there is a little issue reporter you can do there. Or if you hover over, you can do F6 to report for that specific ability. So highly encourage you to do stuff like that. Starting off, the number one that I found is Dark Harvest does not extend UA, which I've talked about a little briefly throughout this whole video, but Dark Harvest is not extending UA at all. So if I go to these targets, you can see I'll apply Agony to these guys, and then we'll apply like Wither to these guys. And if I apply Agony, or if I apply UA to these guys, you'll see that it extends all these, right? You'll see it actually extends it, but watch when they get to 8. So this is going to get to 8, it's going to vanish. 8, vanished, 8, vanished. This one stayed at 6, vanished. So it seems to be adding duration to it from Cold a Week, but it's not like adding ticks or something like that, so the dot's just like falling off. So that makes it a little hard to play around. Hopefully that gets fixed. Dark Lair also doesn't extend UAs. You'll see it extend everything else. So I'm gonna get all these guys out there. And then you'll see it extend, you know, Agonies and Withers. But it doesn't extend UAs. I think it just has to do with the fact that UA is just working differently now. The other thing is Agony or Wither is not extended by UA. So these are not getting any stacks, but if I do a seed, you'll see it get stacks. It's gonna get stacks, get stacks. If I send a UA, no stacks. Also, Malevolence says Chaos Bolt on it, which is, you know, I'm sure this is a typo or something like that, but the Wither's not getting stacks from UA is definitely kind of a problem. It's great that they're working with Seed, but not getting stacks from UA is kind of a big one. There's also this really other weird thing that's going on with Agony, which is if I apply an Agony to a target, it's going to ramp up to 6, and then it's just going to stop. So it just sits at 6 stacks, and then if I let it get low and then I reapply it, it'll either go up to 7, and sometimes it'll go up to 8, or if I reapply it again, it'll go up to 8. I don't know what's going on with this. I've heard varying reports that they reduced the stack count of Agony to like 10, or maybe it caps out at 8 now. I don't know, because it doesn't say how many stacks we're supposed to go up to, but either way, it goes up to 6, and then we can reapply and it goes to 7, then we can reapply and it goes to 8. I'm not really sure what's going on with that, but it's definitely a little strange. So I definitely reported that one. The other one is Nightfall right now consumes both stacks of Nightfall. So if you have 2 stacks of Nightfall, it'll just consume both of them. This has happened basically every PTR cycle with Nightfall procs, where if you have a Nightfall, it'll just consume it, and it'll also consume it like that. So if you see I was casting a Shadow Bolt, and then I was finishing the cast, it just consumed my Nightfall proc. And if I just consumed that, if I had 2 stacks of Nightfall, I sent 1 seed to consume both stacks of Nightfall there. So that's also been a problem pretty much every beta or PTI cycle. That happens pretty much all the time, so always report that one. The Malevolence one, like I said, I did talk about it briefly in the Soul Harvester part 2, is I don't know if it's supposed to happen, but Sucked in the Soul Shard is not being affected, or basically Seed of Corruption is not affected by Sucked in the Soul Shard. I don't know if it's supposed to be, but I don't think it's necessarily a bug. I just think it's an interesting thing that it's not happening with right now. Dark Harvest isn't affecting that. I kind of wish that Shared Agony was a smart Shared Agony. We kind of talked about that, where if it was refresh early. Empowered Healthstone right now doesn't give us an extra stack of Healthstones. I tried this with, it's supposed to give us 4 charges, I believe, but it's only giving us 3 charges. I tried this with Demonic and with regular Healthstone. Both don't get an extra stack, so that's just not working at all right now. As far as the class talents, I think that's the only one I found right now that's working, or that's not working correctly. I think that's the only one. There could be other ones that aren't working correctly with some of these older talents, but I don't see why they would be broken, but who knows, man. I'm not sure, dude. It's definitely interesting. That kind of wraps it up for some of the bugs that I've found. I've definitely reported all of these. There's another one with Malevolence, where if you proc Devil's Fruit Malevolence, and then you Malevolence, you gain the additional duration. But if you proc it while you're in Malevolence, you don't gain the extra duration. It's very hard for me to get that consistently, but it from what I've heard, that is what happens right now. So hopefully that gets fixed, because we could just kind of chain Malevolence if you get lucky with procs there. That'd be nice. And yeah, I think that kind of about wraps it up as far as the bugs that I've noticed. There's definitely a few. A lot of them revolving around UA, and the fact that I think it's just a new spell and it's just not interacting correctly with everything right now. So Dark Harvest isn't extending it, Dark Lair is not extending it, it's not affecting Withers, and it just seems to have some interesting things. Oh, Creeping Death also seems to be affecting it kind of strange, where very similar to this, except in the opposite. So because it makes it tick faster, I think it's also maybe removing like an extra tick of it or something, and it just causes it to sometimes just fall off before it's supposed to. So it'll show the duration, but I think that it's just not having the same amount of ticks correctly, where it's just not working correctly. I don't know exactly how to explain it, but I'm pretty sure Creeping Death is also having effect on UA not working how it's supposed to be. Other than that, honestly, I think the new Affliction feels really fun, man. I hope that they fix all the bugs before we go into Mythic Plus next week. So that's kind of why I'm making this video, talking about all that stuff and all those bugs, and of reporting all of them myself and encouraging you guys to report any bugs that you find for all the classes they are playing. That's how we're going to make the game better. Whether they listen to them or not is entirely up to them, but hopefully they do. The other thing I do want to say briefly is the new nameplates are cool. I hope that the text shows for all the nameplates. Also, stacking is a little weird, especially when you're moving around. They're kind of floaty, so hopefully that kind of gets adjusted. I would love to see more customization come to them, specifically a pandemic timer. So this is the cooldown manager, and it has a pandemic timer built into it, which means that that functionality exists. So I'd love to see a pandemic glow for these guys to also happen. So the pandemic glow pops up here, and then one will pop up here for me to refresh it on time. I would love to see that become a base functionality that's baked into the nameplates, as well as please let them start showing our curses. Our curse shows here. I would love for our curse to also show here, just so we have a very easy, view of what's going on there. That's a pretty minor thing. I don't want to necessarily get into all the bugs and things that I'm seeing with the cooldown manager and stuff like that. I definitely have some feedback on, I think it would be really cool if you could change the color of the pandemic glow and maybe have a little bit more control over the icons and spacing and stuff like that. But as far as base UI stuff goes, that's not really what this video is about. I'm definitely interested in, what the game will feel like in Midnight as we kind of get closer to the actual release. And with add-ons, hopefully some of them coming back that we're, customization and stuff like that. Affliction definitely benefits from being able to see a lot of information, especially pandemic mods and stuff like that. So I'm glad that the new nameplates have some better visibility for us for dots, but I think we still have a little ways to go for some of that stuff. So that about wraps it up for my thoughts, feedback, and bugs that I've found so far playing Affliction in the first week of Midnight Beta. Again, I didn't get access to the Midnight Alpha at all. I would have loved to have tested Midnight Alpha, but I didn't get access to that. So this is my first testing of Affliction in Midnight Beta. Next week we get Mythic Plus. I'm super excited for that. And again, if any of this interests you, please subscribe, check all that stuff out, and I will be streaming all of this stuff live over on my Twitch. I have a ton of fun with beta keys and a ton of fun just testing stuff on target dummies and all that kind of stuff. So anything you find, any feedback, please feel free to reach out to me in the Discord or leave a comment or anything like that. And hopefully you guys find some stuff, and hopefully you guys have a great time. I'm really having a good time with New Affliction, and I'm super excited to see how it feels once we get all these bugs fixed and all that stuff, and we get into keys, and then we get a damage meter that actually works, so we can actually see all that stuff. But until then, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate you. I'll see you guys over on the stream. Take it easy.